All right, welcome to another episode of the Credder Podcast. I'm your host, Chase Palmieri, and with me today is Zachary Kushel, the founder and managing partner at Marin Sonoma Impact Ventures, also known as MSIV for the purposes of this conversation. He's also on the board of directors at the Marin Economic Forum and is the former head of business development at Glassdoor. So while I'm rattling off Zach's impressive resume, I might as well mention that he received his Bachelor of Arts from Cornell and his Master in Public Policy from Harvard University's Kennedy School of Government. Zach, thanks so much for being here today. It's good to see you.
Chase, thanks for having me. And that's a pretty good intro. I kind of feel like I should just have you keep going. You can be my hype man.
There was more, right? You worked for Cisco in the past, as well as I think another couple strong brands that I just didn't have the room to mention.
Well, I appreciate it. Thanks for the opportunity to spend time with the Credder community.
Yeah. And before we dive into what's going on with Marin Sonoma Impact Ventures, which the audience, if they're watching on YouTube, can see the kind of cool logo behind you. Why don't we dive into your own entrepreneurial journey? Because as we kind of talked about briefly before we started recording, most VCs don't actually have much entrepreneurial experience. They're kind of money managers, risk or capital allocators. And you yourself kind of had to fight and claw your way into what is now officially launching your first fund. So why don't you give us some background on your journey and your work experience, and then how you came to want to start this fund?
Well, appreciate it, Chase. And yeah, I mean, the entrepreneurial journey to get this fund launched over the past 25 months has certainly been busy and interesting, but I'd be remiss if I didn't rewind back to when I was 24 years old and had my first entrepreneurial startup experience, because the one has certainly led to the other. But I co-founded a user-generated video opinion content platform called iPonti back in 2009, and it was an experience building my first business. I didn't come from a technical background, neither did my co-founder, and we were managing the technical build out of a fairly complex platform. And I learned so much through that experience. Ultimately, we were not successful with iPonti because neither of us candidly had the skill set we needed to ensure that we could have a successful outcome. And we partnered and we hired out the technology build, and they were able to build out 90% of the platform until we ran out of money and we died on the vine, so to speak, a week before we were planning to actually launch. Oh, no. And 15, 18 months took us to get to that piece. And we had an incredible business plan, an incredible deck. So that was kind of my first big lesson in entrepreneurship. And my big takeaway there was it's a heck of a lot easier when you and your co-founders have the skill set to execute upon whatever you're trying to go build. And we had the passion, we have the drive, we didn't have the expertise. And it's not to say that you can't build a technology platform without a technical co-founder. Lots of successful entrepreneurs have done it. In our particular case, though, we found out why it was so challenging. So fast forward from that experience to working, in an operating capacity at startup companies. As you mentioned, I spent over 3 years leading business development at Glassdoor when it was a Series G startup company that ultimately, raised $200 million in venture financing. I ran people and corporate operations at a company called SmithRx, which was a health technology startup company based in San Francisco in the pharmacy benefits space. And I came on after the Series A and helped scale that company from 30 to 60 employees. All of those experiences, in theory, set me up for launching this venture capital fund, except nothing could have prepared me for launching MSIV. Anytime you have a plan and you have an idea and you have a vision and you feel like you're going to be able to execute upon it, it always ends up being about 10 times harder and taking 2 or 3 times as long. And that was certainly my experience with MSIV.
And I was lucky enough to be at the launch party for MSIV at Ramsgate Winery up here in Sonoma. So why don't you tell us what it means that MSIV is officially launched? What does that mean practically?
Yeah, I appreciate that. So over the last 2 years, we have been building an entrepreneurial community here in the North Bay. The North Bay community, Marin and Sonoma counties specifically, we have had all the elements to have a very robust entrepreneurial ecosystem throughout our history, throughout our lifetime as a community. But we've never put together the pieces. So traditionally, if you're a local entrepreneur and you want to build the next great North Bay startup company, whether it's the next Glassdoor or BioMarin or Restoration Hardware or Autodesk or Keysight Technologies or Amy's Kitchen, which are some of the most prominent North Bay companies that were startups once upon a time, traditionally, there was no organization across the public, private, or nonprofit sector making it their business to help you succeed. And local founders were kind of on an island. They didn't know each other, right? There was no meetup for founders up here that was consistent that people went to. There was no community to tap into. Everyone was kind of freelancing. And that's despite this community having all the advantages for having a potentially robust ecosystem. So from a capital standpoint, this is one of the most affluent communities, the North Bay, in the entire country. Yet until we came along, there was no pooled capital dedicated to this region. From an intellectual capital standpoint, you have leaders of global industry living in this community, yet they're much more likely to lend their intellectual capital to San Francisco or New York than they were likely to lean in to help a local startup company in their own backyard. From a founder standpoint, as we talked about, incredible entrepreneurs live in this community, yet they were more likely to put their company in San Francisco or Oakland and commute, or the ones that were here didn't know each other. There was no community connecting them. So that's what we've been building these past 24 months. We started off by organizing a founder network. We had 5 local founder CEOs of fledgling startup companies come out for our first meeting during the pandemic via Zoom back in the summer of 2020. Fast forward just 15 months later, we had this big launch event. That founder network now boasts over 80 local founder CEOs who are saying, I want to be part of a local startup community. So that's kind of what we've been building. That's what we were celebrating, is bringing together this founder network. We built an executive network. We have 35 local C-level executives who want to give back and help mentor these local startup companies. They came out. The investors in this fund came out. And also we were celebrating the formal launch of the North Bay's first ever regional venture capital funds. For the first time in our community's history, we have a pot of money and a professional manager with a fiduciary responsibility to deploy that capital into this community's most promising entrepreneurs. So that is what we were celebrating, and we are really just getting started, which is really the most exciting part. And I was glad that you were able to make it.
Yeah. No, I've loved those events, and we're going to be promoting this so that we can get more founders into that North Bay network. But I'm curious, has anyone ever attempted this before? And if not, why not? Why is this just happening now?
That's a great question, Chase. And the answer is there have been many attempts to promote local economic development here in the North Bay over the past 30 years. What all those attempts had in common is they all came out of the governmental or nonprofit sectors. And I am a big believer in the power of government. I'm a big believer in the power of nonprofits. But for this particular problem, I felt very strongly that the way to solve it was via social enterprise. And that's what Marin Sonoma Impact Ventures is. We have a dual mandate. We are an investment company. So that is the venture capital component of what MSIV is building and doing. But we also have a mandate to change this community for the better, to create jobs here, to create this entrepreneurial ecosystem, to make it so that it is easier for local founders to build companies here. And that's why job creation is our North Star in terms of what we are working on and what we are trying to build. So that is what never has been tried before. Nobody ever said, let's harness the selfish instincts of the private sector to achieve a public outcome that is desirable and needed. The other way that we are different is in a few other ways. One, this is a regional effort. So previous efforts have always stopped at the county line. We are the first effort that's ever put Marin and Sonoma counties together and said, we are one entity from Sausalito to Healdsburg on this 101 corridor north of the Golden Gate Bridge. Second, what we've done is we've made sure that, our community is not tied to one physical location, right? One of the challenges that we have being such a large region, in some cases it could be 90 miles getting from north to south on that corridor. It's hard to make one specific location the hub for the North Bay startup ecosystem. And there have been past attempts that have, again, tied this idea to location. What we're saying is we want to bring the community to you. So if you're a founder in Petaluma, we want you to build in Petaluma, and how do we help you? If you're a founder in Tiburon, build in Tiburon, how do we help you? Same thing for Mill Valley, Santa Rosa, the Sonoma Valley. We've been sure not to go near physical space with this community that we're building, even though we are convening physically. So that is how we are different, is we're going about this in a very different way.
Yeah, one of the things about MSIV that really piqued my interest when I first heard about you guys, and before we had a chance, you and I, to sit down at the restaurant at that time, was that in my own journey, we started our company out of Petaluma, California, which is about an hour and 15 minutes north of kind of the traditional investing community in Palo Alto and Silicon Valley. And so for us, it made a lot of sense to live there, keep our kind of personal burn rate and company burn rate low by, sharing a home in Petaluma where rent is relatively cheaper, and make that commute down an hour and a half south, on bad traffic days, 3 hours south, back and forth, to try to talk to investors. So it would be the point where any investment meeting you'd want to take, where you have to go to the investor, of course, because they're in the seat of power, you're actually taking your whole team away from the project for an entire day. So to me, from a cost of capital and kind of just a location-based factor, this was really interesting to me. But I'm curious what you think makes North Bay companies or founders stronger or more investable than any other area in the world. Is there something that makes them stand out?
Yeah, I appreciate that, Chase. I would even take your comment a step further and say I have heard reports from many founders where it was a huge disadvantage for them trying to go raise money in San Francisco or on the peninsula, because they'd look at them raising, operating the business in Petaluma or Corte Madera or Mill Valley or, Santa Rosa. And there would be this perception that you're close enough where you could be in San Francisco, but you're not. So you must be building a lifestyle business. And, lifestyle business, right, is the type of businesses, as you know, that venture capitalists do not want to get involved with and don't want to back. I feel very strongly that the venture community got this one wrong, meaning people are building in Petaluma or in the North Bay for lifestyle reasons. That does not mean they're building lifestyle businesses. And as an investor, if I can invest in, founding team A, right, who is living and working in the city of Petaluma, versus founding team B, all of whom live in Petaluma and are spending 2.5 to 3 hours a day commuting to San Francisco and back, I'd be crazy to back that, that second team, right? The first team is going to have that 3 hours of their day back to invest back into their business, back into their physical fitness, back into their family life, and they're going to be a much happier, much better founder. So this idea of, people should build businesses where they live, that is kind of what we're digging into. And as an investor, as I said, I would always want to back that team who is building something embedded in their community versus one that's commuting. So that's kind of the key piece there. And the second part of your question, Chase, I forgot because I answered the first part.
Just what makes us, and not us, because I'm not trying to lump myself in with whatever your next comments will be. But what makes founders who are living north of the Golden Gate Bridge stronger, at an advantage, more interesting from an investment standpoint?
So I think one, they tend to be mission-driven founders, and I like mission-driven founders because they are not going to quit at any pace remotely resembling the non-mission driven founder. If someone's only in this, for a quick return, to build a reputation, for a quick payday, they're much more likely to quit when the going gets tough, or to sell out at a very low number because they're bored or they want to move on to something quote unquote bigger and better in their life. If you take a mission driven founder, they're going to persevere, through the valleys of the entrepreneurial journey. So that's a key piece for me and for us as a community. There aren't any founders here that we're working with who are, building a company predicated on the idea that they can, build a widget, 10 cents cheaper than some other company, right? Even on the software side, forget the physical goods for a second. Similarly, people are trying to, change an industry, and it seems like they were put on this planet to go do that. So that is what gets us very excited. Is you have founders here who are bought into this community. They're passionate about building in this community, and they're passionate about what they're building. I think the second piece is, I think there is this stereotypical idea that startup founders are 24-year-old Stanford graduates, and there's nothing against the 24-year-old Stanford graduates. Many of them are building incredible businesses. The North Bay is a much older population. So Marin County, where I live, is the oldest county in the state of California with a median age of 46 and a half. Sonoma County is right behind it with a median age of 42. Our founders tend to be between the ages of 35 and 55. And again, we have many founders who are younger and many founders who are even older than 55. But they tend to be at a different stage in life. They tend to have children going to school in this community, right? Which is why they're building here. And it also means they have ties here. They're not transient. They're not going anywhere. They have a life outside of their companies. And I think because of that, it allows us as a community to come in and give a greater level of support to them. I mean, that is our whole, fund's thesis, is that, as a collective community, if we can identify the local founders who are best equipped to build that next great North Bay company and harness the full power might of this community to get behind them, that's going to increase the likelihood that they're successful. So
Yeah.
I think the demographics are just, they don't fit any real stereotype. And again, there's no upper limit or lower limit. We have founders we're working with in their 70s, and we have founders fresh out of school who are 22, 23. But the median is definitely older than where that age is on the peninsula.
So let me play devil's advocate for just a second here, and let's
Sure, this
say,
is the fun part.
yeah, if these companies and these founders are so good, then they're still only an hour and a half at the most away from kind of the hub investment community in the world. Why aren't they good enough to just raise capital from Silicon Valley and Palo Alto? Did we cut off there?
Yeah, you cut out for about 20
Okay.
seconds. I don't know whose end that was. I apologize.
Oh, it's actually saying that it's on my end.
No, now it says my connection is unstable.
Oh,
Maybe it's
okay.
all of Larkspur and Corte Madera. Sorry.
Okay, no worries. That's actually good timing because it was a fresh question anyway. It wasn't in the
Great.
middle of your response. So let's see, we're still recording. So I'm just going to jump
Devil's
back
advocate.
and yeah. 3, 2, 1. All right, so let me play devil's advocate for a second here. And why is it that if these companies are good enough, if these founders are good enough, that they can't raise from the traditional VCs just an hour and a half south? Because we see companies all over the world trying to access these Silicon Valley and Palo Alto investors, yet these founders are only an hour and a half away. Why, if they're good enough, can't they just raise traditional venture capital?
So I think many of them can. And I think that is the misconception that I hear a lot about regional venture capital. I think there is this perception that regional venture will always self-select for poorer deals because those companies can't get funded by the traditional venture community, and they're therefore going to turn to their local fund. For us, our North Star is how we created a value proposition that even when founders don't need our money, they want our money because we can help them build in this community. And I've had this conversation with multiple founders as we are digging into our prospective investments. And, what many of them tell me is this idea that, I want you to be involved because I'm genuine about building here in the North Bay, and there's no fund that can help us and help, me complete this task better than you and your fund because you are tapped into the community. So a great example is recruiting. I mean, if I'm looking to hire software engineers in Novato, California, in Marin County, there isn't a venture fund, in Silicon Valley or San Francisco that would be better equipped to help a founder do that than us. So that is, what we tell founders is we want you to raise capital from the best investors in your specific field. Not only that, we want to help you, make introductions to many of those founders and make sure that you have an audience with them. But when it comes to rounding out your cap table and rounding out your list of institutional backers, if a company is serious about building here, they should want us involved. Not only that, I'll take it a step further. The institutional venture fund who's investing in them, knowing they're building here, should also want us involved because we can bring along the community and help them in ways that others can't. Just like how we're not the best equipped fund to help a company, sell into a national market in some specific vertical that we don't specialize in. So
Right.
that's how we think about it. Yeah.
Yeah, and obviously the word impact is in there in Marin Sonoma Impact Ventures on purpose. I think some in the community might think that impact investing means that you're not concerned with returns, or that you're more focused on some other kind of return other than a financial return. So what does the word impact mean to you?
Yeah, it's a great question, Chase. We are an impact fund because we have that dual mandate, right? We are investing to achieve a return on investment for our LPs, for our investors, just like every other venture fund that is out there. But secondly, we are seeking to spur the creation of a robust entrepreneurial ecosystem up here, and we are seeking to create new jobs here, and we are measuring that job creation for our investors. So because we have that second mandate, if you are a two-person team in San Rafael, California, here in Marin County, and you have a $1 billion company, a $1 billion idea, but you never have any intention of building any sort of physical presence here in Marin County, you never have any interest in hiring people here in Marin County because California can be an expensive place to hire people and to do business. And you're going to live here, but you're going to build 100% fully remote, or you're going to open up your office very intentionally in some lower cost location. We're not going to be investing in that company. And again, that's what makes us an impact fund versus just a general venture capital fund. From that standpoint, for us, we really are looking for founders who are attracted to our mission and who want to build their companies here. They want to build that next great North Bay company. We want to find out who they are. That's one lens on the impact piece. For us too, I mean, your traditional ESG investing, your traditional ESG buckets. We are also looking for companies that are making this planet a better place. We have a pretty big problem right now here in the North Bay with respect to climate change that we've all been living through over the last 5 years. And the reality is we are not making diversified investments into a diverse, group of sectors that are insulated from the ravages of climate change. And the traditional industries up here, such as agriculture, such as tourism, such as wine, those will always be a big piece of the community and a big piece of the lifeblood of this local business community. But the reality is that we need to be making investments in other sectors. So we are diversifying the economy, and we are really charting this community into the next generation, into a healthier next generation of thoughtful economic development that's going to create opportunities for everyone here in this community. The last thing I'll say about why local job creation is so important: if everyone is working out of their house every day on Zoom and never leaving their home, or they're commuting into San Francisco and Oakland every day and spending money there, they're not stimulating our local economy here. And we have, again, two of the most affluent counties in the country, yet a stark amount of inequality in this region right here. And when you add together this idea that we're not creating local jobs, at any end of the socioeconomic spectrum, local jobs create other local jobs. And we've cited, multiple studies that have shown for every high-tech job that comes into a community, that high-tech job creates 5 other jobs in the community in all different industries, all different sectors, especially in sectors that are servicing those other jobs that are here. That's a big piece of economic development that we are missing here in the North Bay, and that we are, shouting about, which is, this matters. This matters for everyone in the community. Some of the lowest hanging fruit we have as a region is to promote local startup companies here in the North Bay. And that is why we are so invested in doing that, because it's going to help not just those entrepreneurs and those individuals in the knowledge economy, it's going to help everyone in the community if we get this right and we back and support founders who want to build companies that are embedded in this community.
Yeah. And as you find more success here, I know you're starting to build out the team more. You recently brought on Elizabeth Murphy. I haven't had the chance to meet her in person yet, but she just joined as the first VP of community. I'm curious, what does the dream team look like as you start to get bigger, maybe 5 years from now? Is it a team of many, many researchers? Is it more focused on kind of people like Elizabeth who are networking and bringing in community and making those connections? Like, what are the kind of future hires that would help Marin Sonoma Impact Ventures be successful?
Chase, that's a great question. And for us, like every entrepreneurial journey, right? I could have 20 heads right now. I could tell you exactly what I could use them for and how they can make a giant impact in advancing this mission and advancing this community. Obviously, finances are a good constraining function, and they make it so that you go very judiciously. It's always why I don't ever recommend raising more capital than you need to, because you're going to end up spending it in poor ways. But for us, we brought in as our first hire a VP of community, because everything for us in terms of building a community is about doing that convening. It's about bringing people together. And I don't scale, and Elizabeth doesn't scale. So if all we are doing is making one-off introductions here and there, that's great. But it's much better if we can bring 500 of the key people from this entrepreneurial community together in one physical location. And we're planning to do that for the first time ever in May, at the first ever North Bay Startup Conference that we're going to host. People come out and they immediately make 10 to 15 connections that are helpful for their business, helpful for their network. That is how we scale, is by being conveners. As I think about the growth of this movement too, MSIV is not the entrepreneurial ecosystem in Marin and Sonoma counties. We have a role to play, and we are playing an outsized role right now because we are really kickstarting the movement. But I'm a big fan of Brad Feld and what he and the community have built in Boulder, Colorado, in terms of building a startup community there. And he wrote this incredible book called Startup Communities, which is a Bible of sorts for what we're using here. And what that book talks about is this idea that if you want to have a robust entrepreneurial community, you need to get 15 to 20 people who take on a give first mentality, and who are genuinely, not selfishly committed, but genuinely committed to being leaders in this community for almost a 20-year span. And that is how you can build a robust community. So I use that as an example to say, we can't do this alone. We don't want to do this alone. Organizationally, we will have a key role to play, but we are looking for others in this community to come in and help lead with us. And there is that opportunity for anyone who is genuine to come in and say, you know what, I'm going to make it my business for the next 15, 20 years to make sure that the North Bay has a much more robust entrepreneurial ecosystem, to make sure that local economic development is being pushed forward where it needs to be. So that's how I think about this. We have a role to play, but we're really looking for others to come lead with us from other organizations and other individuals.
Okay. And I think the public knows that startups are inherently competitive because they're either competing against other small startups, or they're trying to kind of overtake or disrupt some big industry player. What you're doing with Marin Sonoma Impact Ventures is obviously unique here. That's kind of what we're talking about, is that you've uniquely positioned yourself in an area where there hasn't been something like it before. But I guess that doesn't mean that you don't have competition. So from your perspective, what is the competition and what is it that you feel like you're competing for?
I think that's a great question. I don't view it as competitive. I really don't. I would say we don't have a single other competitor who we're trying to wrestle resources away from or wrestle attention from. I think instead there's a lot of local organizations that we need to partner with, because we all have a role to play in this ecosystem. So we have 4 community partnerships right now here at MSIV. The 2 4-year universities in the North Bay, Sonoma State University and Dominican University. We have agreements with both of the business schools of those universities where we are partnering. We're setting up talent pipelines from those universities to go into local startup companies. We are hosting events together. We've also signed an MOU with the Marin Economic Forum, which is the local nonprofit in Marin County working to promote economic vitality. with the San Rafael Chamber of Commerce, which is an incredible organization, building out, helping the business community in the city of San Rafael, working with organizations as well, such as the North Bay Leadership Council, which is an executive level, cross-county organization of leaders that's promoting, more sound public policy initiatives to have a robust business community here. These are all potential partners. They are partners. And it's important that we have great relationships with all of these. The other big one is the co-working spaces. Everything from WeWork in Mill Valley to VenturePad in San Rafael, to spaces in Petaluma, to CoLab in Santa Rosa. We want to see all of these communities, these micro communities thrive because they all have a role to play in what we're building. So, I really don't see it as competitive, but maybe I'm naive about that. But I really believe it's collaborative because we are genuine in what we're trying to do for this community.
Okay. And I guess in the startup world, that answer wouldn't fly with a startup. If they heard, oh, we don't have competition, it's usually a negative signal. But I think in your case, you're probably right. They're really.
I think our competition is complacency.
Yeah.
Is this idea from a community standpoint that everything's great, everything's fine. We don't need to invest in building this ecosystem because where we got started here was looking at the job creation figures last decade. And, it's very clear the North Bay not only lags the rest of the Bay Area in terms of job creation, but lags the state of California overall. The North Bay region last decade was in the bottom third around regions around the state of California in terms of job creation. Yeah. And what COVID has done is it is giving this community a once in a generation opportunity to combat against that complacency. You asked earlier, why now? Well, I mean, that is somewhat obvious, right? COVID has changed the game for everything. And for a local startup founder, 9 out of 10 local founders 2 years ago were putting their company in the city and commuting. And today, 10 out of 10 founders are putting their company here, at least to start. So that is the opportunity we have to say, we want to help you when you do get a physical space, when you do make some in-person hires, we want you to do that here. That is the opportunity that we have as a community to come together. So that's how we see the world. COVID is also, I mean, traditionally too, if you're going to build a hyper growth startup company and scale that company to 500 employees in Petaluma, over 3 years, I think last decade you could have said, hey, that might be really tough to do in Petaluma. Is there enough local talent that I need for this? I think it's an irrelevant question in 2021 because California startup companies are never going to scale to 500 people in person in California before they start hiring in other locations. And all that bodes well, for the local startup community because, I think your question, Chase, if I'm in your shoes is, can Petaluma be home to the core 50 people, when I'm 500 employees, right? And I think more and more founders are saying, absolutely, it can be. So the traditional barriers to building here are going down, which is why we need as a community to come together to encourage people to build here. And as an investment community, we need to come together and back these founders because, again, traditionally, based on last decade's data, Marin and Sonoma startup companies were 3 to 4 times undercapitalized relative to peer companies south of the Golden Gate Bridge, relative to peer companies in Alameda, San Francisco, San Mateo, and Santa Clara counties. So that is the historical challenge that we have the ability to reset in this post-COVID world, and we are trying to be at the forefront of making that happen.
Yeah, I think that's an excellent answer. I think complacency is absolutely, or complacency, or maybe just satisfaction with the normal way of doing business and the normal way of kind of putting the weight of these commuting and these 3 hours lost every day just to pitch your company to an investor in Palo Alto. I think you're absolutely right there. That's a strong answer. one of my last questions here on the fund before we turn to the kind of the final questions that I ask every guest that comes on the podcast
Sure.
is when I first joined the Founder Network, I think there was maybe 8 to 10 people, and obviously
You
it's
were an
grown.
early adopter.
Yeah, we were one of the first ones because I was, as you know, very excited that this was launching, and now you're up to I think 80 plus founders in the network. Now, I've been lucky enough to attend many of the events, and every founder that I've interacted with is strong, like you said, very mission driven. These are serious people. But I'm curious, what is the kind of qualification here to become a founder? Because obviously, most people in their daily lives in 2021 are doing something entrepreneurial, whether it's they're flipping sneakers, on eBay on the side, or let's take a true entrepreneur, but maybe something that might not be relevant to MSIV, maybe somebody who's making and selling cupcakes out of their house. What are you looking for in the founders that are joining the network? And is there a certain kind of threshold that they have to meet to become part of that founder network?
That's a great question, Chase. I think for us, the demarcation is clear but nebulous, right? And that demarcation is we are an organization that is working to help local startup founders. We are not an organization that's looking to help and assist the founders of local small businesses. And that's not to say that local small business is not important. It absolutely is. It is the lifeblood of this community. It has been for a long time. The challenge we've had is that we have so many small businesses here, and we don't have enough small companies that end up becoming, large employers. And I kind of rattled off at the beginning the list of local large employers. It's not that large a list for a region of 750,000 people and $43 billion in GDP. The number of large employers is alarmingly low. So for us, it really starts with a conversation to understand that founder and what their mission is and what they're building. And if they are working to build a startup company, and to me, a startup company is one that could reach a national or international market, if it is successful, if it reaches scale. And a local one store organization doesn't fit that criteria. Now, if a local organization, has 4 locations and they have a legitimate business plan where they want to open up 50 around the country, all of a sudden, maybe that small business, looks more like a startup. And that's where, again, these lines can be murky. But for us, we are genuine in terms of our approach of working and helping founders. And what we found is that the folks on the other side are genuine as well. And we want to direct them to resources no matter what they're building. But that is kind of the demarcation for us.
Okay, great. Yeah, I just hope that we can keep that founder network very strong and serious, because I think a lot of people would want to join and come to these kind of really fun, extravagant events that you guys put on too, with a lot of high profile entrepreneurs and founders and other people that come out to speak at them. To me, it seems like something, even if I wasn't actively pursuing a startup, that I would still try to get into. So I just hope that you guys keep that threshold pretty strong, because when I show up, I actively go and, want to start the conversation with every single person there, because everybody there is on the ball. So
appreciate that, Chase. And
yeah.
I think for us, it's giving community members multiple touch points is a key piece for us, right? And, we have this founder specific group for a reason, because we do want that to be as large and as inclusive as possible, while at the same time ensuring that, the right people are part of that group, right? Ones who are genuinely building local startup companies. But what we're going to be rolling out in 2022 is even more ways to engage with this community, whether you're a founder or not, and we're pretty excited about that.
Actually, one last question on this front.
Please.
Would you ever consider removing someone from the founder network because they're being somewhat spammy or taking advantage of the email lists, or being a little too self-promotional, or maybe even, obviously if there was some even worse behavior, yes, automatically they would, illegal behavior of some kind, I'm assuming you would get rid of them. But what about just somebody who's coming and not living to the spirit of this give first attitude?
100%. And you took the words out of my mouth. We want everybody showing up to be a part of this community, going to every gathering, not because, hey, what's in this for me? We want them coming, how can I be helpful to another founder who I know this is a difficult, lonely journey? What can I do during this time to be helpful to them? So We, as you know, this has not come up to date, which I think is a testament to the very high quality of local founders, individuals that are a part of this community, a part of this network. But we take this very seriously in terms of ensuring that folks are I use the word genuine a lot, but genuine about wanting to be a part of this Give First startup community.
Yeah, that's great. And why don't you give listeners, before I ask these last two questions for you, the places they can go to follow your work, follow the progress of MSIV, maybe even if they're a founder in the North Bay, where they could apply to join these founder network events?
Thank you, Chase. There is our website is msivfund.com. Again, msivfund.com. On there, if you go to our blog, you'll find dozens of articles we publish. We publish interviews with local founders, shining the spotlight on their work. We publish original research on the robustness of the North Bay startup footprint and community. And then the Get Involved tab has the ability to sign up for our email list, which we encourage everybody to do. And also there's a link there to apply to be a part of this founder network, as well as some of the other networks that we're building here. So please come check us out. We'd love to figure out the right way to get you engaged.
Yep, great. And to the audience, all of those links will be in the show notes below. Last two questions here for you, Zach. They're out of left field on purpose, just to get people off of their normal talking points at the end here. First question is Bitcoin. What are your thoughts? Are you an investor, a hodler, or do you not know enough about the space to even comment on it? Where are you at on Bitcoin?
Well, everyone has to have an opinion on Bitcoin at this point, I would hope. I am in the wait and see category. I think there is a giant gap right now between Bitcoin itself, which I think has shown over the course of the past few years that it is a rare commodity. There is scarcity there, and people do demand it for a variety of reasons. And I've actually been very impressed with staying power. I don't think that's going anywhere. All of these other currencies, I'm a bit more dubious about at this juncture. But again, I'm not sitting here on an app trading this on a day-to-day basis. I'm more tracking how this thing is going on a week-to-week or month-to-month basis. I also think the promise of the blockchain and some of these technologies, I think they've gotten totally mixed up with some of the applications that we're seeing right now with not just cryptocurrencies, but the NFT craze and all these other items. I think it is a brave new world out there. People are making lifetime fortunes by day trading this stuff over the course of months. And people are losing their shirts as well. And I do find it similar to other secondary trading markets, having been a former Wall Street person myself. I tend to personally be much more interested in investing in real companies that have real people and real businesses behind them, as opposed to just trading secondary, whether it's foreign currencies or new cryptocurrencies.
Do you feel comfortable answering whether you own any crypto yourself as an individual?
I don't.
Okay. So you really are in the wait and see category. Okay.
I am. Yeah.
You're gonna wait and see Bitcoin's price go up. All right. Last question for you here is, are we living in a simulation?
No.
Hard no. Have you thought about this?
I've seen The Matrix.
And you didn't believe?
I've seen all three matrices.
Yeah, the fourth one's coming out December. I think it's December 22nd.
I ran into Nicolas Cage in San Francisco when he was filming it.
Nicolas Cage is in the new one?
Or maybe it wasn't
Keanu Reeves.
Thank you, Chase. Thank you. I'm not the only one that's mixed those two up, by the
way. No. So we're not living in a simulation, and it's not something you think about, not something that should be thought about more than enjoying the entertaining Matrix series?
Sure. Existential questions and crises are an important part of being human, but tell me where that rabbit hole leads you to. And if you figured out how to get to a certain state of consciousness where you can figure that one out, or have you found the Matrix while building Credder? Is that a big piece of this that you're trying to clue me into? Or?
No, nothing Credder related here. I guess if you were to take the rabbit hole down on this, I think what you ultimately realize is that it doesn't matter. What matters is still whether it's a simulated experience or not. What matters is, having healthy relationships with friends and family, enjoying what you do, having some level of financial security, enjoying new experiences, you know, generally all the kind of principled thoughts around love and happiness that you would want, whether you were in a simulated world or not. So I think if you did take the rabbit hole down, you basically come to the conclusion that it doesn't matter. I wouldn't change my decision making based on that reality or not. I don't know. That's what I take away from it.
Well, I agree with that. And I think if you look at that famous Venn diagram, is like what I worry about is where, what I can control overlaps with what matters.
Right.
That's where I spend my time as much as I possibly can. And this, I have not reached the stage where I have any unique insight on this question. And when I do, you will be the first to know, as will the Credder community.
All right, great. And that was a beautiful last thought there from you. So thank you again, Zach, for coming on and telling us about the Marin Sonoma Impact Ventures. I will be closely following everything that happens. And, if we have updates in 6 months, a year that you want to come back on and share with the community, then we'll absolutely do that. But everybody, please go and check out the work that they're doing. And if you are a North Bay founder, you can see me and Zach at a lot of these really, really fun local events. And so Zach, thanks again for being here today.
Chase, thank you for the opportunity and for the time. This was wonderful. Always appreciate spending time with you.